Today's video is brought to you by AlmostHeaven.com. Handcrafting at-home saunas since 1977. Want better sleep, less stress, and faster recovery? Now's the perfect time. Shop saunas, cold plunges, hybrids, and accessories. Use our exclusive code at checkout to save 5%. Link below.
Bo, in layman terms, what's a definition of adversity that everyone can relate to?
Dave, that's a great question because adversity, I guess, on the surface seems like a pretty intimidating word. But I guess I would just define adversity, simply put, is anytime your plan doesn't go according to plan. Every single day that we wake up, we have a vision in our minds on what the day is going to look like. And as such, we set the tone from the get-go. Whether it's our physical routine, whether it's work that we have to be done, whether it's preparing our meals, interacting with our significant others, there is some semblance of a plan that takes place before your feet hit the floor. Now, if those plans don't work, whether it be 7:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., or 7:30 p.m., I guess I would define that in that moment when your plan doesn't work as adversity.
And this adversity you're talking about has different levels of severity, for lack of a better word, because they can be as simple as, I planned on leaving the door this morning for work at 7:30, but I got a phone call. Or it could be, I missed a deadline for a budget report. I mean, those are two levels of adversity, but they still have a potential solution and a way that you can adapt to them.
Absolutely. And so two key words that you mentioned that I really want to hit on is severity and adaptability. And I think severity, more so than anything, has everything to do with your perspective. We all in our minds assign priority at different levels associated with different activities. Some things naturally take higher priority over others. And then adaptability, I think that is absolutely key, because in the moment when your plan, kind of begging on what I said earlier, when your plans don't go according to plan, is that when your plan is actually blowing up in your face, how do you adapt to that? Because if you don't adapt on the other end of the spectrum, you react. Reactions tend to add to a higher perception of severity, whereas an adaptation would be more so you dealing with the adversity as it comes, taking it with a grain of salt and placing it in its proper place with regard to how is this really going to impact the rest of my day, and this day the rest of my month, and for that matter, the month, for the entire year, because chances are in this moment, we tend to make mountains out of molehills. We tend to see our temporary setbacks as if, oh my gosh, I slept 5 minutes past my alarm. In the moment, it's scary. But if we can just bring ourselves, again, begging from what you said, to adapt in the moment, saying, okay, I'm 5 minutes behind, but I'm going to make up the gap at some point. And probably the sooner that I do it, the quicker I will be able to hit my stride and get back to the plan that I've created for the day. We have to work in that flexibility in order to be adaptive.
And I feel like even in my own life that it's about perspective and having that plan B, for example, of what's the priority and where does this rank in my day's priorities. So let's say it is a matter of sleeping in. Well, I can bump things 5 or 10 minutes, but I also have to have the proper mindset to put it in perspective. And I think, you would agree to that as well. Doesn't it come with having a preset perspective to deal with that adversity that comes up that will make you most successful in handling it?
Dave, without question, and you bring up another great point with regard to mindset. I recently read a book with that given title by Dr. Carol Dweck, who compared the two most dominant mindsets that there are in society today. The first being the abundance mindset, the second being the scarcity mindset. And those who operate with the scarcity mindset tend to associate the world with finite quantities. In other words, I only have so much talent or so much bandwidth or so much potential to accomplish everything in my plan today. So at any moment, if my plan goes awry, my immediate reaction is to overreact. Again, we talked about the importance of adaptability. Well, reaction is the polar opposite of adaptation. Whereas on the flip side, those that operate with the abundance mindset, they believe that they have the ability to take things as they are fed to them and be able to turn on a dime with regard to whatever direction I intended for my day to go. It may or may not happen, but I'm still going to accomplish my plan, whether it be in the original method that I saw versus my actual experience. And let me give you an example. I was actually in Birmingham yesterday visiting my sister, and my sister and I are 2 years apart. You know, growing up, we were never that close. There was tremendous sibling rivalry. We moved around, lived in 4 different cities, went to several different schools, which made things, all the more stressful for 2 teenagers. But even when we got home, we were always at each other's throats. And we had some time last night just to connect. And I asked her, I said, what is it about my personality over the past 20 years that causes you stress or tension? And her response is something that absolutely rocked my world. And it's something that I'll never forget, because to a certain extent, it gave me an idea that I had actually taken on some qualities of this scarcity mindset. And Dave, what she told me is, she said, Bo, I don't truly believe that you have the ability to relax. And so when I'm in your company, it's very hard for me to relax. And, I had to give her credit in the moment, because I'm a very intense, focused individual. And so when it comes to planning, perhaps I err on one end of the extreme. And I've noticed, and clearly in her experience, that I've been too rigid. I've been too closed-minded, which in the context of our conversation would mean that I'm not handling adversity well. I'm actually seeing adversity as trouble, as hardship, as distress, misfortune. And these are all signs that I'm on the wrong path, that I'm seeing adversity as actually a disadvantage, where you and I are actually looking at things from a bigger picture and trying to remind one another and holding each other accountable that adversity is really an advantage. It's just all a matter of perception. And so in that conversation that my sister and I had last night, number one, I apologized. And number two, I asked her for the opportunity to prove her wrong. And to the extent that we don't spend the amount of time together that we used to, we're 3 hours apart. She's married. She's a full-time photographer. I'm married. I have my full-time work here in Nashville, which involves significant travel. And so for the limited amount of time that we have going forward, because we do both very much desire to be a part of one another's future, is that would she give me an opportunity to display to her my renewed mindset, that being centered in abundance rather than scarcity? Because to the extent that our friendship has evolved over the last 4 years, that I thrive in the unknown. I do not believe in comfort zones, because when things become familiar, growth is virtually impossible. Because when we get comfortable, we have a very hard time embracing change. And without change, growth will never occur. So, I know that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but it wasn't the response that I wanted in the moment with my sister. And so how did I adapt? Well, I simply asked her for her grace and the opportunity to adjust her mindset going forward with the way that I handled adversity.
Well, I think you pointed out the fact that she said that you're either high-strung, rigid, closed-minded, but your openness to adapt personally right now shows that you are open-minded. And I know that it usually takes the perspective of someone close that you can trust that will tell you the truth that helps you grow. And my question to you is what's the difference between that person who overreacts to adversity versus the person who rolls with the punches? What is that characteristic that a person has to be a little more open-minded and to flow with things?
Sure. I think, and that's another really great question. Gosh, you're stretching me, which I absolutely love. So being asked a question like that has everything to do with the way that I perceive you are going to react to me. Okay, a person that overreacts is affected by feelings, whereas a person who tends to go with the flow believes the best about those whom they are sharing their message with, that they will not use what they hear against them. Okay, so it becomes a matter of, do you have the ability to be vulnerable in the company of your closest friends and potentially your closest enemies? Because vulnerability is a key characteristic in connecting with people. We live in a society that says, show me your highlight reel. Okay, tell me what you've done. Whereas our Facebook feeds, our Twitter handles is all about the best of me. Whereas we have no intention of showing the world our behind the scenes. It's that ability to be vulnerable that leads to the connection, which ultimately is going to lead to a more even keel, thought out, well paced mindset that's going to lead to more fruitful and meaningful relationships. Because I think Facebook has done an incredible disservice to the whole concept of friend. I think any person who had half a conscience would readily admit that their capacity to be a friend and to have a friend any more than, say, 10 people, is just not possible. And so I would rather overpromise and over deliver. And I guess I said that wrong. I'd rather under promise and over deliver than pretend that I can be everything to everyone without disappointing anyone. Okay, adversity can exist in a disagreement. It can exist in an argument, but ultimately feelings don't matter. I mean, choices, you think about the most important virtues in your life, love, responsibility, commitment. These are all choices. They're not feelings. And so if you can make a choice on the front end to overcome rather than stumbling in the face of an obstacle, to be set up rather than set back, from, say, your alarm going off 5 minutes late, from you getting stuck in traffic, from you having a minor disagreement with a coworker, for you not having the workout that you had hoped for. These are all things that work against us naturally from our planning. Is that if we can see today as a very small scratch on the surface of what's a much larger story, that being the entire year, and for that matter, our entire lives together, I think that allows us to keep proper perspective, because perspective is everything. Again, if we are you mentioned overreaction versus more even keeled. I think those that have the best perspective and take things in stride tend to be those that are the most consistent. I don't want to say mellow, but the most thoughtful, and also have the ability to truly listen and to help others who tend to overreact, me being one. I know that's part of my past due to the intensity that I operate with every day. is that I can actually be coached, and thank the good Lord that my wife is the polar opposite of me in her ability to take things as they come. And she helps me to adjust and to adapt. And so I truly feel that God places us together with our polar opposites for a reason, because two Bo Parishes under the same roof would be a recipe for disaster.
I mentioned the difference between a person who overacts and rolls with the punches. And I see this in my own life where I feel like I'm the guy who rolls with the punches and I don't let things affect me. And I'm positive that my past work experience, athletic career has something to do with that. And for me, I can draw on overcoming adversity in athletics or having setbacks and picking yourself up and going at it again or having failures and so on. But what are there some baby steps for someone to take or first few steps on making that transition of the person who doesn't have the real life experience of having to overcome something yet? I'm trying to wonder about some real life um, action steps a person can take to practice overcoming adversity before the real adversity hits the fan.
Sure. Absolutely. And there's actually an acronym, that I would like to bring into this conversation. And it follows the letters of HALT, HALT. And anytime you're in one of the following four mindsets, H being that you're hungry, A being that you're angry, L being that you are lonely, T being that you are tired, those are clear indications where you do not need to engage on any level. Okay, so that's just being aware of your current mindset. You mentioned mindset before. I think it has everything to do with our ability to either react or to adapt to adversity, because adversity can look very different to many different people based on individual circumstances, situations, and feelings. And so being aware of your current mindset and frame of mind and avoiding engagement on any level when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, I think will make up for a lion's share in you being able to deal with a potential adverse situation. Because an argument, an altercation, a dispute that never occurs, there's never any opportunity for adversity. Okay, so that's in dealing with other people. And I think internally, it's being aware of your weaknesses. Okay, and I would say the best way to do that is to assemble for yourself a personal board of directors. Dave, I have four men strategically placed in my life who are anywhere between the ages of 55 and 75. And I've chosen these four men who know me very well, and I've given them authority to speak openly into my life in all matters, personally, professionally, spiritually, from a leadership standpoint. Anytime they see me out of line, and again, we've determined the parameters for being in line versus out line, and it varies based on what's most important to you. Is that when you make yourself accountable, all of a sudden adversity is expected, because we're all human, we're not perfect, we're going to mess up on a regular basis. And see, I meet with these four men once a quarter, and it's basically a personal report. This is what's working, this is what's not working. And I'm always interested in the piece when it's what's not working, because then I get some loving coaching, and I'm say loving coaching in a way where I basically get grilled. And I've asked them to do that because that's what makes me better. We don't get stronger by working on our strengths. Okay. We get stronger by working through our weaknesses. Okay. And pain, as you and I have had in an offline conversation, is a clear indication that we're on the verge of something great. Okay. Pain in the moment is absolutely devastating if we focus on the actual suffering, the discomfort. But pain is an absolute necessity to progress. And so, in our particular topic of adversity, in that moment where we feel like telling someone off, where we feel like the world's coming to an end, where we feel like laying on our horn because the traffic's not moving, it's simply taking a deep breath, closing your eyes, and asking yourself, will this moment matter 1 month from now? And if the answer is yes, well, by all means, continue in your temper tantrum. But that puts you that much further behind the eight ball the next time it's going to occur, because we live in a crappy world. I mean, it's fallen. There's no question about it. It's just a matter of when that next moment of adversity is going to occur.
So it's having the proper mindset to be solution minded, would you say, in the face of adversity? Is that the right course or direction to be in when this comes upon you, whether it's at a level 1 or a level 10?
Absolutely, Dave. And a loose mind is a sign of an open mind, because everyone in the world has something to teach me if I'm humble enough to listen. That can come from an 80-year-old mentor or a 5-year-old kid. The more open my mind is, the greater ability that I'm going to have to adapt to adversity and turn adversity in the moment into an advantage long term.
Looking for a great at-home sauna at a great price? Get 5% off any indoor or outdoor sauna, cold plunge, or infrared sauna from Almost Heaven with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at checkout. For over 40 years, Almost Heaven saunas have been trusted as the top American home sauna manufacturer. Almost Heaven saunas deliver high-quality products and firmly stands behind the holistic benefits the sauna brings to your mind and your body. Again, get 5% off any order with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at almostheaven.com. There's also a direct link below this video.